All right, guys. For those of you that are here for the first time, I want to say welcome to Startup Grind Tallahassee. My name is J.R. Sims. I'm the chapter director for Tallahassee, and I just welcome you guys, familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. Before we get started, I want to get through a couple thank yous. First one being our sponsor, the FSU Jim Moran School of Entrepreneurship. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to make this happen. I know we got some students here that are coming, sponsored by the school, so we appreciate that. Next, our host, Domi Station. Domi has been incredible as far as opening their doors every month to have Startup Grind here, so we really appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Next, Madison Social. They provided some awesome food for us today, so we want to make sure we thank them. And then finally, Alex Workman. I lost you, maybe behind the wall. Alex, thank you for your video work. You've been phenomenal. So anyway, Startup Grind is an event in over 200 countries in 200 cities in 98 different countries. So having one in Tallahassee is a pretty cool way to put us on the map. The goal is to educate, connect, and inspire entrepreneurs. There's that. And what's cool about tonight is that Vincent Hunt, who's here with us to talk about his experiences, actually ran this chapter a couple years ago. So it's kind of bringing it full circle. He's on the other side of the mic this time, but it's a fun thing to have him back, and we appreciate all you've done for the chapter and for being here tonight.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Vincent, the first thing I want to talk about is I want to hear like some memories that you have of running Startup Grind Tallahassee. Tell me about like some moments you have. Yeah.
Wow, 2 years ago, what was really, really interesting about Tallahassee 2 years ago, how many of you were here 2 years ago? Raise your hand. Okay, good chunk of you, right? So all of you pretty much have the same testimony that we're kind of watching, Tallahassee go through this renaissance, this change, where before you had education, healthcare, government were the main pillars in the community. Then all of a sudden everybody started talking about innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, and things like that. So those conversations started to come to the forefront. I was relatively new here. At that time, I think I was here maybe 4 or 5 years. And when I heard about Startup Grind, what I understood was we had to connect our message, we had to connect our story to the rest of the world. And I really felt like Startup Grind was the vehicle for doing that. So it was a natural thing for me to reach out to Startup Grind and pull it into Tallahassee. Now, that was in, like, if you think about it, like cobblestone street time, right, when everybody had just started having the conversation. So it was really, really tough to get people to understand, what is this conversation about entrepreneurship and why should we hear stories of other entrepreneurs, right? So that was a true challenge, where today, as we can see, we've gone beyond that, which is great. So I need all you guys to clap it up for yourselves, for real, because you're really, really bringing this thing full circle. And for JR to reach out to me and say, Vince, I want to take on the challenge, I said, man, it's a big deal, right? Not only from the aspect of what we can enjoy on local soil, right? What we can do right here, have these conversations. But at the exact same time, he's now being exposed to all these entrepreneurs all over the world, right? Tremendous networking opportunity. And as he meets these entrepreneurs and these starters and these founders and these visionaries, he now has the ability to connect them right back to you. Everything from funding sources to, people that can help you build your business. This man is on the front line where all of the innovators are, right? So it's super, super cool. And I appreciate you actually doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I will point out real quick. So before I started, actually in January with the first Startup Grind event that I facilitated, I watched all of Vincent's videos. And one of the things I noticed was he would stop periodically and go, all right, let's clap that up, and we'll start clapping. Yeah. So I'm not going to take credit for it, but I will do that every once in a while. And it's from Vincent, so there's a little bit more history.
You gotta keep the energy.
Let's time travel a little bit further back.
Yeah.
Tell me about you growing up, who Vincent Hunt is, and then go into a little bit about what Creators Camp is.
About Creators Camp. Okay, cool. I'll take you back. Okay, so let's get back to like the core of this thing, because entrepreneurship is something I'm deeply passionate about. How many in this room would actually consider yourself an entrepreneur? Raise your hand. Like, if you're serious about, like, really raise it. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. Okay. So keep your hand up. If you're an entrepreneur, how many of you would say that you're risk adverse? If you're risk averse, put your hand down. If you're, when I say risk averse, you know what that means, right? Like if it's time for you to jump out there and create your own business, no paycheck, just go get busy, right? You're like ready to go do that like right now. Like you can't wait for that moment, right? Raise your hand if you're that person. Okay, those are my real entrepreneurs. We're gonna just keep it straight up, right? Serious business, serious business. Now, a lot of you may have entrepreneurial tendencies, which is dope because we can develop that. But at the exact same time, I believe a lot of the entrepreneurial DNA, it comes pre-installed, right? Now I'm gonna say a lot of hard stuff tonight, and I'm going to bring this thing down so you guys can really wrap your arms around this idea of being an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was 10 years old. I was shown one of the very first Apple computers when I was 10 years old by a guy named Eric Hollingsworth. I'll never forget him, right? And then when I look back at Eric Hollingsworth, I realized this 15-year-old was a visionary. Because when he showed me the Apple computer, we were at a slumber party. He shows me this thing. He says, this thing is going to change the world. Now, mind you, this is many, many moons ago, right? Straight up, I'm 44, so you can only imagine. That was 34 years ago. Computers weren't even in everybody's household. Like right now, there's not a single household that you can go into. I don't care what the social economic condition is. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a busted computer or something, but there's going to be a computer in that household, right? I grew up in a time where there weren't computers in households. So to see a computer light up was dope. That was super fresh to me. And then he started talking about this word entrepreneurship. My dad worked in a factory, right? Worked 3 jobs, in fact. So we never ever talked about entrepreneurship, ever. And I was super, super creative. I was that kid that was always drawing stuff in my room. So when he talked about the computer and what it would do, how it would change, how we do business and how we connect with each other, and at the exact same time said the entrepreneurs are going to rule the world. They're the starters. They're the ones that are going to make moves, right? All of that stuff was provocative to me. I was like, that's what I want to do. So I was 10 years old when that began, right? Yeah. And so from there, I did everything from selling candy in school to cutting lawns and creating the first. Yeah, I was making dollars. But at the end, like I figured out, like if I've got something and I can double that thing up, like I was buying my now laters at like 10 cents a pack, selling them for like 25. Like within 3 months, I was making $800 to $900 a week because I also realized that if I get teams and put them in different schools, I can make more money, right? I was very entrepreneurial from a very young age. I had the very first garage cleaning business. Everybody else was washing cars. I was in the shade. I figured that out. And I'm cleaning garages. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I was always super entrepreneurial, from the jump. But we can fast forward, right? So, entrepreneurship is in my DNA. But as we move forward, and I went through life, I actually started delving into the world of entrepreneurship at a deeper range. Military 91 through 95 because I wanted to get close to computers. So I went in as intelligence. I didn't go in as infantry. Do we have any Army people in the room? Raise your hand. Okay, hoorah. Now, I didn't want to get on the front lines. If you did, good. I wanted to stay behind the computer so I could learn it. Came out in 95, and then that's when I started going down the path and really, really seeking out opportunities to be an entrepreneur. And I started one of the very first web design and development companies in Indianapolis, Indiana, way back when commercial web first came to the forefront. Right? So that's kind of like a sped up version of how I got to becoming an entrepreneur. But again, that was many, many moons ago. And I've done a lot of things since then along the way, because you'll find as an entrepreneur, there is no one road. There's many roads. And so you got to get comfortable with the idea of being able to pivot and shift and take different opportunities and different risks. Absolutely.
Yeah. So from being in the military, would you say there's any big takeaways from your experience there that really kind of either propelled you or taught you a lot of good things about moving forward into entrepreneurship?
Absolutely. I mean, this might sound a little cocky, but I don't think anybody in this room is going to outwork me, straight up. I'm up at 4:30. If you're getting up at 4:30, I'm up at 4, right? Like, I'm going to figure out, like how much I need to exert to truly, truly be competitive in a very, very volatile marketplace, right? And so as an entrepreneur, you got to get that kind of grit, and the military really kind of honed that in for me and disciplined it to the degree where I can like exert it at will at this point, right? And then when you practice it over periods of time, you realize that it's an actual skill, right? My business partner, Sandy Chavez, she won't get up until about 8 o'clock, right? She's like, I'm not a morning person. I was like, you better learn to be one. You know what I'm saying, right? So we have these fights back and forth, but I'm realizing that it is a competitive advantage. Because I am very, very disciplined in that way. So the military really kind of shaped my discipline and my rigor as it pertains to my work ethic.
Great. And we want to thank you for your service, by the way, too.
Hoorah.
And the
Go
two
ahead
in
and
the
clap
crowd.
that up.
The
You know
two
what I'm
in the
saying?
crowd.
Everybody that served, get up. Yeah.
So, by what you're talking about, really the first entrepreneurial moment for you was being introduced to that computer.
Yeah.
How is that shaped, or was that what inspired you to start Creators Camp?
Creators Camp. Okay, Creators Camp came about in a really, really interesting kind of a way. I actually came to Tallahassee, now it's about 7 years ago. I was in between consulting projects. I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, what opportunities that I want to seize, right? So coming out of the world of consulting, I went to Indianapolis, Indiana, kind of posted up, told my dad, I'm in a great area. I just want to chill at the crib and just create, right? So my dad gave me that freedom. He said, well, just make something then, right? So, because he knows how I roll, right? Like I transition from one layer or from one level to the next, or one, if you call it dimension, to the next dimension by just taking time to just pull back, really, really looking at the marketplace and trying to figure out what it needs and then trying to go fill that need. So during that time, this was about 2010, I actually built a platform called Menuless. I designed it from the ground up. At that time, if we can all remember, it was when the iPads were first coming out, right? So tablet PCs and this idea of mobility started to like really, really pump up. So in my mind, I started to think about how we could actually replace paper in the marketplace, right? Because the contracting job that I was on before, the consulting job, I realized because it was a news station, they were burning trees up every single day, right? Long story short on that, they actually became one of the very first paperless newsrooms because I seized the opportunity of using the iPad in the newsroom, so we replaced all the paper. And we're talking about Barrington Broadcasting Group. They had like 12 different stations all over the country. So that was a saving of about $2,500 per station per month in paper, right? So that was like a frugal innovation for them. But that made my thoughts, continue to go. And I was like, what other industries are dependent upon paper? So I looked at the restaurant industry, which was like not sexy, but they use menus. Raise your hand if you've like used a menu before. I want to make sure I'm talking. The rest of y'all ain't used no menus? Well, I was wrong from the jump. Okay, so every restaurant uses menus, and when you go down and you really start like researching those transactions as it pertains to like the creation of the menu, how much they spend on the menu engineering, there were so many details about the menu that I did not know that I found out just by studying. So in my bright mind, I wanted to figure out how we could replace all the menus. I wanted to make a more intelligent, a more proactive experience out of those menus, and I wanted to use mobile technology to do it. My vision was to have iPads and mobile devices in every restaurant where you didn't have to have paper, and that menu could respond to your own dietary constraints or wishes, right? Mm-hmm. So designed that platform, designed it from the ground up. 300 pages later, I shipped it to some friends that were in Tallahassee at that time. Drew McLeod, who's over running DoubleTree right now. If you've ever met him, he's a beast. He's awesome. He's so fresh. But he looked at it and was like, Vince, you got to do this. I'm like, do it like, what do you mean? Right? Because as a consultant, I just wanted to sell the idea. That's all I wanted to do. He was like, no, you got to do it. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? So now, mind you, he said that, but how many people in this room know Drew McLeod? Raise your hand. You know Drew McLeod? You got to meet that guy. Go over to DoubleTree and meet him. He's going to love on you, hug on you, and give you awesome stuff, right? So Drew, he's an operations guy. I'm an innovator, right? So Drew, behind the scenes, he's writing up SWOT analysis on this thing. He's doing all kind of stuff. And ultimately, he raised $120,000 in about a month.
For you?
Well, it wasn't.
For the idea.
For the idea,
okay.
Right? And I was like, okay, that's dope. He was like, now you got to do it. Okay. So I moved to Tallahassee, and that's how I got here, right? And then from there, in the next 6 months, we raised up $800,000, right? We built the first layer of the platform, was cannibalized in 1 year. So we died in a year. Sucks, right? That's how it works. In the world of entrepreneurship, you got to be willing to die, right? Yeah, right. It's going, right, exactly. And so we did pivot, and there's some other stuff that popped out of that. Stadium Runner. How many of you are familiar with Stadium Runner? My man's familiar with Stadium Runner. It busted out. There were some other things that kind of like spawned from that and other opportunities for other people. So like I'm super hype about that, but we died in the marketplace. Here's what was interesting. This is how we get to Creators Camp. I'm a consultant, started a company, died, but I'm still an entrepreneur, right? That does not change. I'm still employed. Did y'all catch that, right? Even though you ain't doing something like right now in your lane as a professional entrepreneur, I'm still an entrepreneur. Like that is not going to change, right? So in that, I created a company called Massive Corporation, and there was only a few people. My man Dominic, he knows. David, I didn't know him at the time, but we talked in detail that Massive Corporation was really kind of like a holder company for me, and I just wanted to listen and find out what the community truly needed, because I didn't want to go out and just create something just for the sake of creating, because I have that superpower. That's one of my superpowers. I can create. I know that, right? So I didn't want to just create for the sake of creating. I wanted to find out what the community needed. At that exact same time, I was doing a lot of talks at FSU, FAMU, TCC, talking to the students, in those schools about creativity and innovation, right? Me, this is what I didn't know. What I didn't know is there's a bunch of young people sitting in juniors and seniors. I'm talking about in college. That when you ask them what they want to do, their answer is, I don't know. Raise your hand if you think that's a little weird. Now, you don't have to lie to me. Like, I thought it was weird, but you don't have to think it was weird. I thought it was weird that we have $1.3 trillion in debt, school loan debt, and the number one answer you get from a kid sitting in a classroom is, I'm figuring it out. That's like this. If I had $80,000 in my pocket right now, cash, right? That's like going to the Infinity car dealership, sight unseen, and say, just give me a car. I'm going to give you all the cash, and I'll figure out if I like it later. You feel me? Like, that's just weird. It's odd, right? To make that big of an investment, but not have an idea of how you want that investment to give you an ROI. Does that make sense? That's just straight entrepreneurship 101, right? So it wasn't just one classroom, it was many classrooms. Matter of fact, to this day, when I go out to eat and people are serving me food, right? No shame on the servers. Anybody serve up in here? My man's a server. No shame on it, right? But here's the deal. Master degree students. Like, how did you get here? I don't know. Came to FSU, got my master's degree, and I'm still figuring it out. Right? Here's another statistic. 43% of kids coming out of higher education are unemployed or underemployed. You know why? Because they just don't know what the heck they want to do. Right? So they just kind of roam around. That sucks. Right? So, yeah, right? So, on the 5th talk that I did, I'll never forget, because I was fed up. I asked the same question. Now, this time it's a loaded question. How many people in this room know what you want to do when you graduate? Nobody raised their hand. We got some who know what they want to do, right? But for the most part, 98% of the kids in that room at that moment didn't know what they wanted to do. There was 2 people who raised their hand, kind of like what just happened just now. And those 2, one said, I'm going to the military because I'm scared, and I'm just going to the military. The other one's like, I'm going to TCC to go get some skills because everything that I've learned up in this point, I can't use it in the real world, right? I turned around to the professor and I looked him straight in the eye and I said, you know what, brother, we suck. It's our fault that this is going on, right? Here I've been on the earth a long time. I've got context, you've got context, and if we're not asking them, what do you want to do once you get out of here? How can we help facilitate you going to make a difference in this world, right? If we're not asking that question, and it's just the business of school, brand education, we're doing the wrong thing, right? So at that point, I went back to my little crafty team. I said, all right, guys, I know you all fresh to death because we're consulting and we're doing cool stuff, but I want to work with kids. Lost my team, boop, they gone, right? They were like, I'm not working with kids. But I had a small cohort of people. Jason Stam, how many people in this room know Jason Stam? Jason Stam, we had him. We had Shelby Howard. How many people know Shelby Howard? Ryan Bonhart, right? These people stuck with me and they said, Vince, let's go do the work. We started going to classrooms for free, right? Setting up in the computer labs, just exposing them to computer programming. We're not teachers. We're consultants and designers and makers and innovators, right? But we took it as our own, like, jab in the face, like we're not doing our jobs, as it pertains to creating more of us, right? So that's how Creators Camp actually got started. It was just this idea that we just need to do better as it pertains to preparing young people for the future. I know that was a long, like, winded answer. Are we good, though?
You're good.
Go ahead and clap if y'all good. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you, baby.
So this is what I'm curious. Obviously, you basically talked about the shortcoming that you saw in the way kids are being educated, and you wanted to fix that. But why do it with Creators Camp as opposed to, I don't know, maybe advocating for changes in the education system or becoming a teacher? Talk to me about that.
I'm gonna try to give you a good analogy without being too rude. How many educators we got in the room? Because I don't want to make you mad. If y'all start throwing stuff at me, I understand. At the core, because now remember, I'm a creativity and innovation consultant. So when I go into organizations, I help them create, I help them innovate, right? At the core, innovation has no friends. Ask Uber. Ask Blockbuster. Ask Tower Records. Right? Innovation has no friends. When innovation comes, it's going to disrupt. Straight up. Now, I can't like be selling DVDs and Blockbuster talking about I'm about to disrupt the DVD game. Can I?
No.
So I can't go get into school talking about I'm about to disrupt the school game. Right? It has to come from my man, right? It has to, he's like, clap that up. It has to come from the outside in, right? As it pertains to innovation, because you're talking about a 100-year system. That's like Uber going to the taxi cab company saying, hey guys, we want to do Uber. What about you guys? They'd be like, are you crazy? That's our livelihood, right? It's the exact same thing with education. Education innovation, I think, should be at the paramount of the conversation right now. We have a 100-year system trying to create innovators and creators. Check this out. 65% of the kids that are sitting in primary school right now, 65%, you know what that looks like? That's like all of y'all, not y'all, all of y'all are going into jobs and occupations that haven't even been created yet. Check that out, right? But we're still teaching them the exact same way that we did 100 years ago. So a lot of them in their mind, they're thinking, I got to find my one thing, do my one thing really good, keep my head down, get good grades, check the boxes, and I'm going to be okay. No, you're not. You're just not, right? The example that I use a lot of times is that of a surgeon, right? I would use accounting because I've been hype about accounting, but my man David's in the room and I keep making him mad. How many of y'all need an accountant? Because he's the baddest accountant in the land, like that guy, straight up. But I'm going to talk about surgery, right? Little Bobby wants to be a surgeon, but little Bobby, he's in middle school right now. Little Bobby won't be a surgeon until 15, 18 years from now. Little Bobby's going to become a surgeon in the year 2032, not 2020 sci-fi, oh my God, 2020, no, 2032. Right now, Google DeepMind, how many of you familiar with Google DeepMind? Google DeepMind, artificial intelligence, it's a beast, computer learning, it's awesome, right? This is the problem that little Bobby gonna have. If little Bobby subscribes to this idea, I just need to do my one thing and specialize in my one thing and I'm going to be okay, he's going to be insignificant in the year 2032, right? Because this is what's going to happen. He's going to go and he's going to get his chops, he's going to become a surgeon. But as soon as he goes to the hospital, they're going to say, okay, great, little Bobby, we're looking at your resume looks good. What do you know about robotics, little Bobby? Nothing. Why not? I'm not interested in robotics, I'm interested in surgery. I'm great at surgery. What do you know about AI? Nothing. Why not? I'm not concerned with AI, right? I'm good at surgery, right? They're going to say, well, Bobby, we can't use you right now because we're looking for somebody who can actually do those things because, see, you've been replaced by the robots who actually do the surgery. We just need somebody that can work on them. Ouch. And nobody's telling Bobby that today. Do you feel me? So the future with automation and AI and all the cool stuff that we be looking like kicks and giggles, that stuff is real. Matter of fact, the Department of Labor said 125 job classes are going away. You thought the recession of 2008 was bad. Watch what happens when a whole bunch of folks who are highly trained and professional people, their jobs completely go away. What are they going to do? Does that make sense? So to get back to your original question, how come I didn't go do what we do at the school or work in some other capacity? Because I truly believe that innovation will start with the parents. When the parents start to understand that I've got to send my child to the specialized tennis coach because they're a rock star tennis player, right? It's the same thing with education right now, right? If your child is going down the sheeple path, I can guarantee you they will be extinct. There's a good chance of it. If you're not looking at alternative ways to actually increase your child's ability to think creatively, critically, think on their feet, right? Look at the world in a more 360-degree concept instead of saying, ooh, if I just do my one thing. They have to look at their one thing and say, but what other technologies are impeding on my one thing? Because I need that too. Does that make sense? If I go and take this to the school system, it'll take 20 years for them to implement something. 20 years. Because of regulations and all the other stuff that they got to answer to. It's a slow-moving machine. At Creators Camp, we do it in real time right now. We do not wait. If we roll out something in Creators Camp, now you can, am I lying, Chris? Nope. If I roll out something in Creators Camp and that joker becomes extinct, we stop and we do the new thing right now. Period. I have nobody to answer to. And our kids are on the edge of everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done with that.
So,
y'all good? They're like, Vince, he sucks. It's so dark and gloomy. So dark and gloomy.
So do you see, yeah, we're gonna try to get a little more positive here, but sticking on that for a second, do you see the education system headed in a better direction?
Let them answer that. What do y'all think? Negative. How many of you think it's headed in a better direction? Raise your hand. How many of you think it's just getting worse? Raise your hand.
So what do you say to somebody that isn't exposed to something like Creators Camp?
Wow. What do you mean?
Like where do they turn?
You know what? Like, this is like one of the greatest social responsibilities that we have right now. I truly, truly believe that, right? Like, so for instance, how many of you are parents in this room? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay, imagine this. Your son or daughter is running down a dark tunnel. And at the end of that tunnel, there's a train waiting to crush them. That's pretty grim, right? Thinking about that, right? Well, that's the world right now. They're running down this path, right, to a future that's absolutely uncertain. Everything is going to be weird and kind of funky and like new, right? But you ain't saying nothing as it pertains to how they should be preparing themselves for that. Nothing. So it's all of our responsibility. Vince can't do it by himself, right? I can only talk to so many parents. It's the thing that keeps me up every single night. And as an entrepreneur, that is what you're looking for. You're looking for the thing that bothers you so much that you're going to find the answer, irregardless of the money, irregardless of all the other stuff. You're going to do it because you know you have to. Does that make sense? So let me go on a side tangent. Stop with all the let me connect my friends on the campus apps. Stop with all that stuff as an entrepreneur and go solve a real problem. Does that make sense? There's money in real problems. Go partner up with David and figure out how you're going to use AI to take accounting to a whole nother level. Go do that, right? But I think that it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just Vince's responsibility. It's every single parent. They need to become aware. They need to wake up to the idea that the old prescription is not working anymore. It's just not. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better, right? If you think about all the degreed students that are coming to the marketplace, what makes them different? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Put 10 degreed students in front of me, right? And if all them jokers are checking off the box, I don't want to talk to them. I don't need a test taker. I don't. I need a critical thinker. I need a revolutionary. I need somebody that's going to come up with the new ideas to help me solve this problem with them 65% of kids going into a space that's uncertain. That's what I need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's clap that up. So, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so Creators Camp is a nonprofit.
Yes.
What advice do you give to somebody wanting to start a nonprofit? And talk to me about maybe the pros and cons of running a nonprofit.
I'm still trying to figure that out. To be honest with you, I talk to David a lot, right? Like, being a for-profit CEO for as long as I've been one, right? Like, we understand the marketplace and we understand how we need to penetrate that marketplace, get adoption and share and all that other kind of great stuff, right? In the world of nonprofit, I actually sat down with one of my mentors, Tim Center. Tons of shouts out to that guy. He sat down over breakfast one day and he looked me straight in the eye. He said, Vince, there is no difference. Straight up. How many nonprofit champions we got in the room? Raise your hand, right? The nonprofit, in the world of nonprofit, you got to come with the same tenacity and grit, you know what I'm saying, funky, fresh style that you would as if you were like a for-profit CEO, straight up, right?
More. With no budget.
Or even more, right? Because now you're doing some stuff that ain't even really sexy sometimes, right? You're doing something that matters. And a lot of times people ain't going to just pay for, great, you're doing a great job. Oh, okay, well, let me go to the movies, right? That's how the world kind of responds sometimes to your great work that you're doing. Creators Camp is a little bit different. I usually get people hyped about Creators Camp, which is a little bit different. So, I mean, we get a lot of love, but at the exact same time, there is no difference in between the for-profit and nonprofit world as it pertains to how you have to hustle and really go get the things that you want to accomplish and do.
Right.
But there are some distinct differences, of course. Make sure that your financials are in line, right? Because no longer is it about how much profit you make, but it's about how much impact you make, right? So that's why we got David on deck. You see what I'm saying? Because he makes sure that what we're doing is in compliance of how we're actually using the dollars that we actually bring into the organization to do the good work that we do, right? And we just transferred over into nonprofit this year. Because I was like, wait a minute, I'm gonna be a for-profit, and how come for-profits can't just do good, right? Mm-hmm. That was my fight the whole time. Like, I don't understand why a corporation is looked at as just profiteering, but we can't look at them for the good work that they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to kind of wrap my mind around that, but there are tons of opportunities in the nonprofit world that you don't have in the for-profit world. One of our, one of the people that we're courting right now is Salesforce. They straight up said, well, Vince, we can give you $5,000, $10,000, great, ooh, kumbaya, as a for-profit, right? But if you were a nonprofit, oh, the game changes, right? They got me in a whole different department talking to their CSR team, which is a little bit different, right? Their corporate social responsibility teams, which we're talking about millions now, not 5,000, 10,000, right? So those kind of conversations begin to happen once you actually cross over into that realm.
Gotcha. So it didn't start as a nonprofit.
Not at all. It was straight up for-profit.
Was there a tough transition this past year of going from one to the other?
Not really, because I got great people around me. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing as an entrepreneur that you've got to learn quick. Surround yourself with great people. When you surround yourself with great people, you can make moves, like a lot more moves than you'd be able to make all by yourself, for sure, because they just know more. Does that make sense? So most definitely. So to switch from the for-profit to the nonprofit world, it's been a little wonky, a little weird, only in the sense that now we have new superpowers that we can execute on. But at the exact same time, you know, it's that whole idea of managing all of that, right? And making sure all that comes together.
Right. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. You kind of touched on it in the beginning.
Yes.
You know, you had everybody raise their hand. Okay, yes, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes.
The rest of you, you know, different category.
Yes.
I know you're really passionate about this topic, and obviously for you, you found a problem, you know, talking about Creators Camp, and that's what you attacked. But what do you say to those other people that are like, oh, well, you know, I'm not risk averse, so.
And I don't want you to have like the long face if I called you out, if you're risk adverse, right? And I called you out, there is no long face in that, right? That's just straight up. Like the security of being inside of a company that's giving you a consistent paycheck is pretty goddamn awesome. Go ahead and clap that up. Like, that is pretty dope. That is pretty good. But you've got to, like, I think that there's this thing that, like, right now, entrepreneurs are being looked at as like these heroes, right? Entrepreneur is cool, like be an entrepreneur, right? Right? I'm an entrepreneur, right? Like sometimes it's like a gift and a curse because I don't like the structure of management. I don't like all of that, like climbing ladders and all that could never ever appeal to me, right? Straight up. But at the exact same time, I take on the risk and the burden of actually starting something from scratch. So sometimes you ain't making no money, right? The year before last, I think the most I made was like $25K. You know what I'm saying? Like it was rough. It was crazy. But I love it because it's the thrill of trying to build something, right? But that's the truth behind entrepreneurship. That is the real deal. And we celebrate entrepreneurship, but one thing that we do horribly, right? And I think it's just bad. We don't celebrate the intrapreneurs enough. How many of you have actually heard that term before, intrapreneur? Raise your hand. Some of you, I would be willing to bet that you're an intrapreneur and you're not really an entrepreneur. And you've got to own that and be okay with that. The idea of having a business mind and the savvy of an entrepreneur, but you want the security of a company, is dope. Kim Moore over at TCC, she's a superhero, for real, for real. Kim Moore puts on her cape every single day and starts businesses inside of a business. That's an intrapreneur. That is dope. For real, for real. Can we clap that up? Seriously. So if you're an entrepreneur, quit walking around fronting as an entrepreneur, knowing good and well that you're risk averse. And if I tell you we're going to start a business today, we ain't going to have no money, we're going to be eating ramen for the next 9 months, and that's all you get, and you're like, oh no, I don't like that. right? Go ahead and claim your thing and be like, but I still got these ideas and I still got hustle. I just need the security of a paycheck, right? And I like that idea. Like, own that up. Because as soon as you own that up, you can be hired by a corporation that will leverage that ability, and you'll go to heights that you can't even think or even imagine right now. You see what I'm saying? Kim Moore, I talk about her all the time. Then you've got Jim Murdoch over there, who's a visionary all into himself, President Murdoch. He creates a space where entrepreneurship can live. Does that make sense? And in today's economic environment, there are more CEOs saying we need to give entrepreneurs power because they have the answers, they have the new solutions, they have what we need, and we're willing to pay it. We're willing to pay them, right? So there is that division in between entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship and in creators camp, because it's really about self-awareness, knowing who you are. Because when you know who you are, there's nothing that can stop you in this earth, period, right? So having a sense of self-awareness, like knowing what your chops are, what you bring to the table, is everything. But I think we got a lot of posers right now. And there's going to be a whole lot of broken heart posers. And I don't want to see it. Seriously. I don't want to see it. I want to see people excelling and doing great things in their life. But it all starts with you being very, very self-aware and being very honest with who you are in your DNA at a very core level. Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. So if you're an entrepreneur, get you a t-shirt. Like mine says entrepreneur. I want you to get you a t-shirt. And I want to say, entrepreneur, I will rock your house. Or whatever you say to keep you pumped up every day, right? And then start looking at companies that you feel like you can take your skill set to and rock it out, right? Because it's important and it's valuable.
Yeah, and I'll just echo too. I mean, you know, what you mentioned, the idea that, you know, we don't celebrate the entrepreneur.
We don't.
Really ever, or just not enough, you know, at least. And because of that, you know, there's probably a whole lot of people that would love to hear that, and when they hear that sort of thing of like, whoa, like, you know, I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur, that kind of fits who I am. That's like, that is super freeing, like a weight off their shoulders going, whoa, like now let's get at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You guys kids right now over in the School of Entrepreneurship, right? And here's the thing, right? No shots. I'm going to throw some shots out. So you have the School of Entrepreneurship. So there's a class on grit, there's a class on bravery, there's a class on risk aversion, there's a class on fearlessness, there's a class, right? Is there? See, because those are the DNA, right? Those are the DNA factors of an entrepreneur, right? Are you learning business? Yes. Matter of fact, my man will tell you, Dominic, like I suck at business. I do. I need Dom.
I would never say that about you.
But that's why I be knocking on Dom's door like, Dom, okay, tell me how to make this make some sense, right? And so I'm smart enough to know that I'll spawn ideas, I'll create the framework in which those ideas can live, but there's a business component that sits on top of it, right? The checks and balances, the real stuff, right? I suck at that. So school will teach that really, really, really well, right? Absolutely. And if you put your arms around it as an entrepreneur, you can go into an organization and crush it, right? But if you don't have all that other stuff, those electives called fearlessness and grit and bravery and all that other kind of stuff, I promise you, when it comes time for you to graduate and you walk across the stage, this is what I want to see. Coming out of School of Entrepreneurship, I want to see 200 new businesses. If you're getting a hat put on, you're getting a little piece of paper saying I'm an entrepreneur, go start your business. But you're not going to see that. What you're going to see is they're going to go work for a company. Do you see what I'm saying? Or they may try the entrepreneurship thing kind of halfway because they're afraid, right? So they're stumbling around because they have on shoes that really don't fit them. And then I'm going to see them at Outback somewhere, and I'm going to say, what happened to you? Well, you know, I got my degree in entrepreneurship. I didn't really do it. So I'm trying to figure it out. When the fact was they were probably an entrepreneur and nobody ever told them. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's very real. So amongst your peers, right? Have that conversation. Like say, sit there and like say, let's really, really think about this. Are you really, really going to go start something? Or do you want to take these skills and these abilities and apply them somewhere where you can actually see some growth in that organization? Do you see what I'm saying? That's a very real and honest conversation. Had it, because I think it's important.
Yeah, amen to that. I would like to open it up for a little Q&A. So if there's questions in the audience, let's get them rolling. Looks like we got one in the back.
You know, I was looking at the website and this.
Talk to me about Creators Camp, Creative Camp. What is it? What do you do?
Yeah.
How does it make a difference?
You know what? I was just told like 2 days ago that our website really did like explain what Creators Camp does, and I said, you know what? You're probably pretty much right. Creators Camp is so interesting. It's a very, very complex tool for a very, very complex problem, right? How do you prepare a young person for absolute uncertainty? What I think makes me good for this position is the fact that I'm absolutely unafraid of uncertainty. So I'm just going at it. You know what I'm saying?
No scared.
No scaredy, my man, right? That's the hashtag, no scaredy cats, right? We're gonna go. We're gonna figure it out. So Creators Camp, to answer that question more succinctly, it's a year-round program designed for elementary, middle school, and high school students, not college students, because by the time you get to college, you're so well programmed, right? And you're following the playbook so well that the unlocking process should have happened well before that. Do you see what I'm saying? So by the time you go into college, you're like, I already know what I'm gonna do. I got an idea. I'm gonna go crush it, like in engineering, and I need to come here to get the paperwork that says I'm an engineer because I'm going to go do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's a platform for early exposure because I think early exposure is very, very key. Again, I got exposed when I was 10 years old to something that didn't happen until I was like 24 years old. Like web design and development was not around when I was 10. But I believed that it would come one day, something, didn't know what. Again, I'm not afraid of uncertainty, but I was exposed early so I could dream about something bigger than what I was at that moment. Does that make sense? So I believe if we do a better job at giving young people early exposure, so that's one thing that Careers Camp does, we expose them to the STEAM paradigm. I don't like using the acronym STEM nor STEAM. I'm gonna be honest with you. I really don't like using that acronym because I think that acronym is going to die. Because I really believe the problem is much bigger than these little acronyms that we've kind of latched on to ourselves. Because what these kids have to know moving forward is far greater than an acronym. Do you see what I'm saying? So we do expose them to forward-facing occupational ideas. Whether you have science, technology, engineering, art, design, which is deeply important, that's my thing, and math, right? So we expose it to them. We just keep, exposing, let them poke the box. We create a space where it's safe to fail. Like we fail a lot. Chris could probably attest to that. Alani, she'll fail real quick and be like, well, can we pivot? You know what I'm saying? I love it because she's building up that resilience. Can we just fail already? Like I love it when kids come to me and say that. Like we've been going down this path a little long. Can we just fail? I'm like, yeah, we can. Go ahead, pivot, right? So we create a safe space where they can fail, and we reframe that word failure. Because I think that we've been told that if we get the F, then like we're losers. But if you talk to any successful person, anyone, all of them will tell you that their greatest teacher is failure. It's kind of like the opposite. Does that make sense? It's weird. It's like we're living in the Matrix, right? My man is like grinning like, yeah, that's what they told me. So we do that. The other thing that we do, which I think is equally, if not more important, is we focus on 5 core, what we call the creative core, right? I called over 250 executives all over the country and asked them, when kids are coming out of college, what are they missing? What would you like them to have? The first thing they try to have a conversation with me about is this thing called entitlement. I'm so tired of that. Like, I tell all my peers, and they can prove me wrong. Like, I tell them, quit saying it. Like, quit saying that the millennials are the entitlement generation. That's almost like saying God just came and dropped like the big entitlement gene on the world and gave, you know what I'm saying? Like, entitlement is not something that you're born with, it's something that you learn. And we did it, the old heads. We kept telling you, go to school, get good grades, keep your head down. I'll make sure that you have a nice computer, a nice car and everything because I don't want you to feel any hurt or any pain. I just want you to get good grades because good grades is going to get you to the top of the totem pole. Just keep going, keep going. So that kid does that, right? Then they get to college and we say, join the social clubs, get involved, connect, right? They're really sitting in the classroom talking about, I'm trying to figure it out, right? But my man was like, he caught that. So, but at the end of the day, they come into a world where all these awesome things are promised. Once you get your degree, the whole world of opportunity opens up for you. An opportunity to submit about 125 resumes, right? How many of y'all have been there, right? 125 resumes, 125 interviews later, and you're still getting offered a starting salary. But you've been on Facebook and on Instagram watching folks jump out of helicopters in Dubai, all that, right? They look about my age, you know? Like, you're believing this, right? And let's be real, like, you want it. Like, they told me if I do these things, then I'm going to get X, right? But it don't happen that way. It just don't, right? but then we're going to turn, and as soon as I'm doing that interview, and I say, well, we can start you off at 35,000, and they look at me kind of weird, like, because in their mind they were probably thinking 80. Yeah, I'm being real, right? They just spent the 80 already, right? Like, I'm gonna be paying my bills. I'm like, no, the game starts at 35, and they're like, what? Now, the worst thing that I can do is look at that kid and say, oh, so you're entitled, huh? You feel like you're entitled. I said, I get it. See, nobody taught you about hard work, nobody taught you about grit, but this is what I promise you. As a leader, my job is to get you leading. Is that cool? Can we make that deal? Can we make an exchange for the other 35,000, right? And that works because they just need a chin check in a moment of truth after all the lying. Does that make sense? So Creators Camp is very, very honest in that way. We spend a lot of time. It's truly the art of teaching. If you've ever been on the Creators Camp floor or in the arena with kids in Creators Camp, it's very, very, very detailed. Every single kid, every single idea, every dream is addressed.
How's it deployed? Is it part of the classroom? Is it after school? Is it weekends?
It's primarily weekends. Throughout the school year, you have basically 5 design narratives within Creators Camp, the way that we execute what we do. We have Fireside, which is pretty much like this. I straight up stole it from Startup Grind.
We can clap that up.
I said, my man is on to something. We need to facilitate talks where young people are hearing from people that are in these industries, so we can find out that John Arthur, who's the state geologist, he used to collect rocks and not baseball cards. So that little kid who's sitting in the audience who collects rocks and not baseball cards is like, dope, that's me. You see him? And now the parent is looking like, ooh, you're not that weird, right? So that's Fireside. That's straight up, right? We need to start getting parents comfortable with the weirdness of their kids. So that's one thing. The next thing that we do is flight or smaller experiences, still exposing them to science, technology, engineering, art, design, and math. It could be Google Cardboard, it could be 3D printing, whatever. These experiences are usually anywhere between 1 to 4 days. If it goes to 5 days, now it has to be classed as an expedition, which is the next layer. An expedition is 5 days plus. So you may have a 1 week, 2 week, 3 week expedition. A good example of that, my man Alex Workman, he did drone technology last year. It was a whole week. He did everything from taking them to the airport, learning about air safety and everything. So they were looking at the world of drones from a maker's perspective, not a consumer's perspective. And some of those kids will eat your lunch, straight up. Seriously, if you think drones are cool, when you have a 10-year-old come to you and tell you that he wants to create Amazon Tower because it's easier logistics for Amazon to fly to one point versus everybody's homes, that's dope, right? I'm like, yeah, that's fresh. So that's expedition. The next layer in the design narrative, you have what's called creative core. That's when we actually break out and we actually do creative core training. So they'll have a day of just communication, right? It'll be the very first half is just learn about communication. The second half is execute on communication. They do that year round as well. So during the school, the biggest thing to remember is during the school year, it's usually on the weekends. During the summer, it's just straight out all tilt boogie, right? We getting it. And there's tons of experiences that they have. Matter of fact, Chris, their daughter Alani is a beast. How old is Alani?
8.
I forget. Like she's 8, but she's so phenomenal.
She's about to turn 30, I think.
I think so too, and I'm good with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we harness that? You know, she's so awesome. And so that's pretty much the framework of what we do. It's very, very creative in nature. Our experienced engineers are given the freedom to create because I think that the art of teaching is what's really been stripped away. When you have a person that's deeply passionate about what they know and what they understand and to give it to a young person, there is an art to that, right? If you box it up and make it like this rigor and there's no room for like failure and all the other stuff that really does pop up, right? I think it becomes too rigid of a system. So our system is very loose and very fluid in the way that it flows, and some people are completely uncomfortable with that idea. But I bet you I can attest from the Creators Camp parents that it just works, right? You got 8-year-olds in the room with 16-year-olds. And when you see them working together because the content does not shift, the content remains rigorous, right? That 16-year-old being able to explain something to an 8-year-old that they may not understand is phenomenal because the level of affirmation that happens in that transaction is dope, right? So hopefully I'm answering your question succinctly. Year-round program. The last design narrative, I know you want to know about that, tribes. That's what happens when they get in high school. A tribe is a straight up business. And we're going to do one of those real soon this year. We actually prototyped it last year and failed miserably. It was crazy. But this year we're going to do it again, taking the institutional knowledge that we got from last year to do it again, where we actually put kids in a scenario where they start a real business. No scenarios, no fake play money. Parents go from doing membership fees to actually seeding into their child's business each month. And they use those dollars to actually scale and do their business, whatever that business may be. So that's tribes. That's the last scenario.
We'll take another question.
If it gets me out of fundraising, I'm good with it.
He said that right there. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
You just said that you place kids from different ages.
Yeah.
Do you think that could work in the school system, like the real world?
So let's go back to the original question. How come you don't do this inside the school, Vince? Because the question's just like that. Like, I wouldn't know unless I tried it.
I'm just saying, if it does change after 100 years.
Yeah, I think, like, based on what I've seen, I think it's, like, phenomenal when you watch a group of kids. We're all very tribal by nature. We just are. And the learning experience is a human experience. We like to learn together. We've been doing that since the beginning of time, right? So when you take all these kids and, like, put them together and you're working on something, like, let's just say Raspberry Pi. Does everybody know what Raspberry Pi is? Okay. Little microcomputer. You got to build that thing from the ground up, right? Can be pretty complex to an 8-year-old. But at the exact same time, when you got that 15-year-old straight Googling up hacks for it and sharing it with the 8-year-old, the 8-year-old's like mind blown and they're going to another level. You see what I'm saying? So there is, and I think that factory mentality of like putting them in like grades and rows, right? So like one of the greatest testimonies that comes from our Creators Camp kids is I love the fact that I can work with other kids of different ages and different superpowers. They love that idea, and all of them know what their superpowers are. It's pretty dope. So hopefully I answered your question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'll work.
I think it would.
Let's go ahead and create a school. You ready? She's like, my man.
So what's going to have the biggest impact on society in the next 30 years? Is it virtual reality? Is it augmented reality? Or is it Bitcoin? I mean, or artificial intelligence as well.
Those are really, really good questions, y'all. So check this out. Augmented reality and virtual reality, let's not even think about that.
Right.
Mixed reality. Start thinking about that, right? There's a company called Magic Leap right here in Florida called Magic Leap. If you've not heard of them, look them up. They're on the next edge, right? I think they raised like $2 billion with Google and some other like strong players because they're saying that we're going to go beyond virtual reality and augmented reality. All that's cool. But at the exact same time, you got to kind of look at that lens through the maker's lens and not the consumer's lens, like what's available to you to buy off the shelf, and look at where the true technology is going, right? So when we can start to actually cast images on like the wavelengths that are the light waves that are in front of us all the time, and that becomes your reality, that's what's dope, right? So that's going to be a game changer as it pertains to education and how we actually teach, I think, right? AI, you cannot sleep on AI and you cannot sleep on computer learning. I think those two technologies are going to be tremendous game changers because they're replacing people, right? When you replace people, you've done something, right? And we can all have kumbayas and have little fires and be sad over the fact that people were getting replaced. But what do you think horses felt like when cars came to the game? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's going to happen. Again, innovation has no friends. So to answer your question more succinctly, I think you need to keep your eyes on AI and computer learning. All this other stuff is cool, but I think those two, even in the world of mixed reality, they'll be driven by AI and computer learning. Imagine a computer that can actually generate an image for you based on the conversation that you're having with it in real time.
It's just that it's error checking too. That's
Exactly.
the biggest thing for machine learning.
Exactly. Did y'all get that? I think that's dope.
How do you feel about, or do you think that with AI and machines and automation, everything taking over everything, as we've seen, it's getting rid of entire classes of jobs as we speak? How do you feel like, I feel like we're not prepared for the great existential crisis that will happen culturally and racially and species-wide? Like, we're gonna have a great existential crisis, at least nationwide, if not internationally. And
Globally.
at some point that will happen, but like, so what can we do? Do you see any way we can be preparing for that? Because it seems to me like, I think a big problem with not having critical thinkers and how everything is kind of based on the 1950s making factory workers and making worker bees is we don't teach people to think. And I think philosophy should be, like, do you think like teaching philosophy to kids starting at the beginning?
Yeah. I think empathy plays a big part of this, right? human beings have this superpower called creative intelligence. We're the only living thing on the planet that has it. The ability to have novel, new ideas and thoughts, right? We think a thing and we create it, then it exists. Like 99.9% of stuff in this room, right, came from creative intelligence. A human being saying, oh, let's create light. Then you have light, right? The microwave that's behind the counter. Let's cook food faster. So then we found a way to do that. We're very, very like keen and we have the ability to do that. And I think developing that and authorizing that and saying that that is okay, right, gives us at least a little bit of a chance in all of this changing and shifting. But I think the biggest thing that we all have to kind of like, I don't know what you do, like take a hot shower, be still, go to the beach. I don't know what it is that you do to get your kumbaya moment, but stop being afraid. And as entrepreneurs, start thinking about, instead of being afraid of these technologies, how do I now leverage these technologies to replace the people? Oh my God, but what about the morality of you replacing people? It's going to happen irregardless if you do it or not. Do you see what I'm saying? At least you could create a company with a moral conscience that says, okay, we're going to create a platform, an accounting platform that replaces all the accountants. But I'm going to make sure that the accountants that we replace have jobs within our company. Do you see what I'm saying? Where some capitalists will be like, bump it. Like, we crushed it. We went in. We ain't worried about you. Right? Versus the morally conscious company that says, you know what, David, you're a rock star. Now, yes, AI did replace you. And I know it sucks. But you're a professional and we need you. Right? Can you help us? Right? I think there's more of that needs to happen, and that's the job of the entrepreneur.
Awesome. Let's give Vincent a round of applause.